your life is on the line and you know that you're on an oxygen tank and they're going to put you in your head, see what you do. Because the bottom line is that me, I'm one person. I can never miss.
Guy's not being loyal to you. How could you be loyal to him?
Yeah.
And whether you're your father or not. So, you know, but it's always been hard because it was my father.
The word came down, this guy had to go. You know, we didn't know nothing about it until the last minute. And I liked him. I liked Billy. He was a nice guy, but...
Welcome to the show.
With Fat Tony Salerno for 5,000 position, meaning 5,000 win, 5,000 plays, 5,000 show. And I told him, I says, you're nuts. No bookmaker in the world is ever going to take a bet from a harness track, much less 5,000 a position, meaning win, plays, and show. And sure enough, he went back the next day. He went to Tony, and I says, how the fuck you do that? He says, Larry, we bet over $2 million a fucking weekend with this guy on sports. He's going to give us a courtesy bet of whatever we want at track odds. And he did. Especially back in the 70s and 80s, you just can't run. I always showed up. I have 2 or 3 stories about guys who owed 1/10 of what I owed, and they ran and never to be seen again. Now maybe they ran and never to be seen again, and maybe
they're in a drum somewhere out in the bay, so, right?
You don't know. So I know what it's like. I've seen the families of guys that would not cooperate, how the families deteriorated, and how you sit there and you say, how the fuck, and you go there and you're helping the wife out with the little kids. They have no money to eat. I know, I've been through it. I was the one that come there with the envelope when I had nothing to do with nothing. It's just that I knew of them. I knew of the family. I met them before, and the guys in jail. And
do you remember when Sammy Gravano cooperated against John Gotti?
Sure.
And do you remember what the ambiance was like in the street, or what people were talking about when all that first hit the news that Sammy Gravano was going to testify?
I look, Sammy Gravano was married to Karen. Sammy Gravano's wife had a twin.
He was married to Debbie Gravano.
Her sister was Karen, I think. I forgot.
That's his daughter. Karen's his daughter.
Okay, Karen's his daughter. Anyway, Sammy's wife had a twin sister. Them twin sisters were the best friends of my cousin, Jovina, in Brooklyn. I knew every move that Sammy was making, how he was making. And the reason I knew and got a little bit involved, even though I never wanted to meet him in person, because I started a business called American Heritage Standardbred Sales, and I was doing a $13 million job on a Gregory Hotel, which was on 14th Street in Brooklyn. And at that time, Sammy was basically taking over all the operations of all the construction and everything else. Now, I had an ace in a hole if Sammy ever approached me, and that's why I took the job. But I had no desire to meet with him. I knew of him. In fact, I knew where he was gonna. There was so much bullshit going on back then. I don't like to get too involved in that stuff because it's a lot of what you hear, especially if you only hear one side of the story.
Did you ever hear about Sammy Gravano being in the gay relationship?
Yeah,
and what do you know about it?
I don't know anything about that.
Nick Scavetto, right?
I don't know anything about that. I don't. I don't know anything about that.
He was a hairdresser too, right?
Well, so was Joe Pesci, and so was Frankie Valli. So what's that mean? Yeah, he was a hairdresser. And I went to Wilford Beauty Academy when I was 15 years old because my best friend's father died and left him 20-something beauty parlors, and a couple of them in France. So he says, my father left me all these beauty parlors. I'm going to go to Wilford Beauty Academy. Come with me. I'll make you a partner. So I went to Wilford Beauty Academy. I lasted until finger waving, and then I threw the mannequin at the teacher, and I walked out.
I went to the beauty academy. I just stood at the window like this, looking at all the girls. This is about all I did there.
Anyway, I don't know how far you're gonna go with this stuff, because
We got 57 minutes so far.
You're gonna wind up getting a lot of shitty emails, and
You think?
and say, yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there that I can't. I don't want to say too much, but there's just a lot of people out there that are associates, and that they're in that, they love that life, and I try to stay away from them, because especially the lower rung people. I mean, how the fuck do they even make a living anymore? I don't know how they do it. I just don't know how. But they're all around. They're all looking to make a name for themselves. Look, when I was doing my thing in the 70s at Aqueduct and Belmont Racetrack, it got to the point where you'd have all the 5 family associates were there. All the 5 family soldiers were there. All the 5 family captains were there on the first floor, the second floor, the third floor, the fourth. No matter where the fuck I went, the elevator would open, and there would be everybody, because they knew what I was there for, fixing them races at Aqueduct and Belmont.
Hey, Larry. Hey, Larry.
Not hey, Larry. What do you got? What do you got? What do you got?
Yeah.
And then I'll never forget the time, and it gets sickening after a while, because I'm fixing these races to save my life. These guys are just looking to rob somebody or do something. You know, it's like them owning a gas a store, and me coming in and taking the money out of the register. Give me half your money. I'm fixing these races because I need a certain amount of money and it's costing me $20,000-$30,000 to fix each race, and they just want information for free. But you're not obligated to give it to them, but you better give it to them, because then they get fucking attitudes, and who wants to have an argument?
But they give you favors for information, right?
No, I didn't need them for any favors.
You didn't ever need to call them and say, "Hey, I need a favor."
Not the guys that approached me. The guys I needed the favors from were the guys that I made the phone calls to. But the guys that were at the racetrack, the associates and the underlinger guys, they after a while, after a couple of months, they knew who I was. Word got around, and before you know it, you have a problem. I'll never forget the time they used to have at Belmont. They had a little cove where they had 3 windows where you could bet $100 windows, and they made sure whenever I got there, what they did was they always had a guy online. If they knew I was on the floor, and I says, I got to stay here for the 7th race, or I'll let you know later. So when the 7th race came up, they had a guy right at the front of the window, and he'd let one guy behind him go, then one just where you never get shut out. And then when it was like 2 minutes to post time, they'd let me in front. And I never forget, after I made my bet, okay, go ahead, make your bet. And I would never tell them until like 2 minutes. And so I made my bet, and the guy, maybe 2-3 guys behind me, died of a heart attack. And this is just one incident. There were hundreds. And the rest of the line was all mob guys waiting to make their bet. And they're yelling, hurry up, let's go. I didn't give a fuck, because I already got mine. So other guy drops dead. They're fucking stepping on the guy, get him the fuck out of here. And they just had to make the bet. And that's how them guys were. That poor guy, maybe he could have, I don't even know if he lived or died, but they were stepping on him, kicking him out of the way, just so they could make a bet.
Did you ever have someone where they're telling you they want to place a bet, and you're like, no, not right now, and they keep asking you, follow you around?
No. I try to put myself in a position where that could happen very easily. No. The only time that I told a guy not to bet that I was with was Nicky Barnes when he came to the racetrack when I first met him. And I said, thanks for the dinner. I have to leave now. I have to go in. I got a horse in the last race. I used to fix the last race superfecta every night at Monticello. And he says, oh, what do you got? And I says, Mickey, you can't bet. You can't bet. There's no handle here. You're going to fuck everything up. Race going to be bad. And that's when he says, well, meet me after the races. And I got something that you might like. And that's when he told me he can get down with Fat Tony Salerno for 5,000 position, meaning 5,000 win, 5,000 place, 5,000 show. And and I told him, I says, you're nuts. No bookmaker in the world is ever going to take a bet from a harness track, much less 5,000 a position, meaning win, place, and show. And sure enough, he went back the next day. He went to Tony, and I says, how the fuck you do that? He says, Larry, we bid over $2 million a fucking weekend with this guy on sports. He's going to give us a courtesy bet of whatever we want at track odds. And he did. And we made a lot of money for about 3-4 months till they all got pinched. So that was the only time I ever told a guy. But sometimes, because after the races every night, I went to a nightclub every fucking night. And every nightclub was owned by a mob guy. And a couple of times it happened, the guy come over, the guy who owned the club, a mob guy. I heard you're doing pretty good. You come in here, I give you a front table. You don't ever get a check. And I heard I never get a phone call, like it's like you have to.
Like you owe them, right?
Yeah. But in their world, you do owe them, because they are who they are,
Yeah.
But I always try to treat everybody with respect. Hey, look, I've been around a long time in the streets. I did a lot of stuff, and somebody, I don't know, in the back of my book it says I led a life that most would not survive, and that's very true. But the reason I survived is I was diplomatic. I always showed up. I always respect to everybody. And just like I told Mario Gigani once, when I had a little problem with Louis, you are who you are. And if you tell me to do this, I will do it out of respect for you and your position. But I try never to get myself in that position. And so I'm very aware. I'm very aware of everything. And through the years and hanging out with a lot of these guys, the upper guys, you got to know, and John Gotti was one of them, you get to know how to read people. And after a minute or two, you know that this ain't the kind of guy I want to get close to. You just know it. And
I think these guys are bullies. These guys who cooperate and come on here, not all of them, not people like Larry Mazza. He stays to himself. Mikey Scars pretty much stays to himself. But people like John
chopping up Gravano bad. I mean,
real bad.
If everything that he says is true, and I guess it has to be true because he has court papers, he's gone right off the book that he said, and he was right there when all of this happened. So maybe it is true. Who knows?
What's going to happen when John Gotti Jr. comes out? It's coming.
You think that's going to happen?
John Gotti Jr. has got a podcast coming out.
No.
Yep. He's coming. He's the next one on deck.
I saw him at a friend of mine's wake, and
his lawyer, was it his lawyer?
No, it was Nick Valalongo wrote
the Green Book.
Green Book.
We talked about it. Yeah,
his brother died of fentanyl cocaine, and it was at that wake that I saw him, and I just told him because they were coming down pretty hard on him, and this is before Mikey Scars started kind of defending him. Gravano was coming down pretty hard, and I went to him and I said, I says, John, I says, I know your family been taking some tongue lashing. I says, I just want to tell you this. I had a couple of dealings with your father, and I knew your father. He was a good guy. He was a good guy, and I did a couple of things with him, the most honorable guy. Here's a guy, we whacked up over $200,000. That was all his. He didn't have to give me half. He did. He gave me half. He was just a good guy, honorable guy, and one of the few guys. See, like when I asked Larry Mazza, how the fuck how did you get to that point? You're a smart guy. Yeah. How did you get to the point where you're following the leader? You're taking orders. You're getting a call at 3 o'clock. Get here now. How the fuck did you do?
Yes, sir.
The phone.
Like, I don't know.
John Gotti.
Listen, but if I sign up for that and I sign an oath and this is my life, then this is the type of sacrifices you got to make. And no matter what happens, you got to ride that till the wheels fall off. That's just how I feel.
Yeah, I can understand that argument, but there's the other side of the coin, like I expressed, when you're laying in there in solitary confinement day after day, month after month, and you're worrying about your kids and your family.
You got to think about that when you sign that oath, because you got to go take that oath over your own family. So you got to think about that before you do that.
That's why I'm neutral, because I understand both sides of the story. Now, there's some guys on that list that I'm sure you're going to come out with that you might even agree with. But it's hard to say. It's just tough. But John was the kind of guy that you knew. I met him when I was 16 years old, when I had first with the trailer truck tires and then with the Cutty Sark whiskey and stuff.
He would be around your age right now. His birthday just passed a couple days
ago.
Yeah,
he was the same. We were both 16, 17 years old when we were he was finding all these guys. He was more into it than me. My thing was when I was a kid robbing gas stations. The 3 trail loads of Cutty Sark whiskey was the biggest thing I ever did. But he was used to them bigger things, and he had outs for all of them. But you knew, of all the guys that I knew, there were two guys that in my mind stood out. One was Tough Tony from Corona, Tony Federici, who owned the Parkside. I grew up with him, and John Gotti. Them two guys. Tony dressed as well as John. Tony had the Brioni suits. Tony was a very, very sharp guy, but a lot lower key. But wherever you saw John Gotti, I mean, he was at Regine's every night Tony was there, but Tony was very, very sharp. But aside from all of that, them were the two guys I knew that no matter what, they'd sit in that cell. And they were smart enough where they were in a big earning position where their family was going to be taken care of, even if everybody else flunked out. And but them are the two guys that I think I respected the most. Them and Mario Gigani. He was a great guy.
And Lucchese, right?
What's that?
Tommy Lucchese.
Oh, I met him when I was 16 years old. He was but he was the guy that said,
he left an impression on you, right?
You did the right thing. You didn't rat on them guys. Yeah. So if that was the advice, I don't know, but that was a guy that put me on the right track. And then a scummy white collar bullshit motherfucker was the one that turned me into a bad kid, that put me through all this trouble and was responsible for my father dying. See, at that point, now here's the difference. At that point, at my father's funeral, a couple of friends of mine, I says, go find this fucking guy. Because my father died of a broken heart because of what Tannenbaum did. I says, go find this fucking guy. I couldn't, when the funeral parlor first opened, Moresco's funeral parlor on Astoria Boulevard, right underneath the Triborough Bridge on the second floor. And I'm sitting there, just me and my mother, when nobody else was in the room. It just opened. And I looked at my mother, and she had a tear coming down her eyes that just kind of stopped right there. It was like a painting. And I looked at her, and I says, Mom, I'm so sorry. And she just looked straight ahead. I walked downstairs, and I stayed there for the 3 days that my father was laid up. The last day, my friends came, and I says, go find this guy.